the best way to start is actually to read. First books I always recommend is Steve Biko's I Write What I Like, right? To start conscientizing oneself around race dynamics, but also around eventually into Pan-Africanism, right? So that's one element. And I say that also because everything, like I said, is intersectionally linked. But another important piece to read, and you can Google it, right, is Bell Hooks. She's a woman academic from America, but she writes quite well to start off. You know, this is not the be and end all, but it's a nice way to start learning and reading different things. So that's one thing that I think is very useful. The other thing is we have social media, right? Start following on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, strategic accounts that seek to awaken and bring some consciousness to us, right? So you can start with like BLM, you can start with more feminist pages, you know, and that will lead you into following other people who even do short snippets of videos. Let's say you don't have the time necessarily to read. They can go into small snippets of videos where they actually sort of explain different terminologies. So one of the things that we do, and I know you would have noticed, we started to spell women as WOMXN. And the idea is to include trans women and people who don't necessarily identify, you know, the label of male, female. Doesn't necessarily fit for everybody, right? Because your sexual organs don't always equal your gender, right? Gender is a construct that human beings created. It's not something that you're born with. You're born with a sex, right? Which also could be both, and it can get quite complex. But gender is created by people. So this idea of I'm a woman, I'm a man, etc. is very important because it also leads to this idea of toxic masculinity, of what a man must do, what a woman must do. So that's one thing. The other thing is also to also be kind to yourself. In this process of unlearning, it's going to shake some of your core values that you think are fundamental to who you are. Right? Whenever we talk about decolonization, I often say to people it's a very violent process to the self. There's so many things. You know, let me give you a better example. You know when you were growing up and you were a little bit uncomfortable by something someone said or something someone did? That's usually the first indication that that wasn't okay. But you know, you socialize to think it's fine, right? You socialize, I'll just move on with my life, right? I won't feel that emotion. So I think the first step is to allow yourself to feel it, even if it is at first in private. And the next thing is to do it in your social circles. So one of the things I don't think we do enough as young people, in as much as we may be politically active and we may be conscious, we don't take our friends who are not politically conscious on the journey with us. So we hang out with them every now and again, we go out, you know, we meet my high school friends, etc. But we don't do enough to conscientize that space, and we don't call our friends out when they say problematic stuff, right? Especially guys, when they talk about smashing, they talk about, you know, no one uses this word, but like conquering the other sex or whatever it is.
Finishing.
I know no one says that. I said that.
Say finishing.
But you know, when people talk about it in that way, I'm in this awkward phase where I'm young, but my colleagues are very old. So like I spend a lot of time with old people, so I have to remind myself that I'm young. So I'm in this in-between phase. But you know, so also calling it out. And calling it out in a way not just to be difficult, but to say, no, that wasn't necessary, you know? This is rather how you should say it, or just don't say it at all. So, you know, just set a precedent in your friendship group of things that are okay and not okay to say. Do that reading, follow up on those strategic accounts, and also understand that it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight, right? I'm still unlearning many things, right? I come from an Indian Muslim community in South Africa where I'm 26 now, so I'm the oldest unmarried girl in my family. And everyone's kind of freaking out. Everybody's like, oh my God, Fasiha's too political. Which man's gonna marry this one? You know, she's too independent, she knows her mind, she doesn't cook. You know, I'm not this typical, you know, kind of person from my community. And I'm right now having to unlearn that my value is not attached to getting married. The peak of my life is not finding a life partner. That is an important thing, yes. But that doesn't define who I am. I'm an incredible woman. I'm working hard. I'm driving my career. We're breaking every single glass ceiling that exists. And there's value in that for me, right? But it's a daily struggle to be in my community, be in my space. And people always say, they're like, so when are you settling down? My favorite one, so are you done with the politics thing now? Are you finished? I'm like, no, it's like a lifelong process. So be kind to yourself, identify it, and also find people who are progressive, and find and surround yourselves in that way. And also, and then my last point, in your relationships. I like to do this thing of like proper 50-50, and I'm not just talking about paying the bill at the end of the date. And I'm going to say something that I think we need to also talk about, right? Especially when you're in a relationship where you're mutually exclusive and you start to have unprotected sex, and the onus is on the woman to deal with the birth control and that kind of safety issue. Let's challenge that notion. If I'm on the pill, my partner must be as aware of what that means. He must read up on those things. If I need to take the pill at a certain time, and I know this might sound strange, but I'm also, experimenting in different ways. I've told him to put an alarm on his phone as well. Because why should I be the only one who's inconvenienced, every day at a certain time? When he, it's really, why must all of the burden always be on the woman? Right? So you must also set the right standards for yourselves in both ways, around equity beyond just the financial ideas. And I know it's a bit controversial, but hey, we get to decide what is and what isn't right. And I think that's the most wonderful thing about our generation, that we've acknowledged that some things are wrong and that we want to change it. And be kind to yourself. It's not an easy process.